I'm Scott Allen Miller, and I live in Leon, Nicaragua, and I'm going through cinema history, one movie at a time. Our last video, we talked about the melody of Broadway from 1929 that really kicked off the talkies in Hollywood. This is the movie that really established the full voice acting cinema craze. Now, there were talkies before that, but this was groundbreaking. Later in 1929, and this is absolutely crazy, we get the movie On with the Show, which is also a full talking movie, and importantly, is the first full feature film to be released in full color. Let that sink in for a second. It was only the second really important remaining full talking, full release movie, and it was in color. We got one full talkie in black and white of any relevance before we got a full color one. Now, in preservation terms, the color versions of On with the Show have not survived. So unfortunately, you have to watch it in black and white, but you are familiar with color movies and you can remember that you're seeing something that was being shown in color. So this is one of the great special effects is the reason it exists movies. So there's a ton of just song and dance numbers and filler that to modern audiences really feels like filler. The story of this movie is very weak. The acting is honestly pathetic. It makes Broadway melody actually seem pretty good. Those were more silent stars. This was starting to be people who were trained to live. They had a few months to prepare for talkies. They'd probably seen Broadway melody when they did this. But this was a phoned-in movie, as you kind of expect from a special effects spectacular movie. But those song and dance numbers would have been in color and been really something for audiences to see. Most of them would have never seen projected color before. A few would have in shorts and technical previews, but this was the real deal. This was, we finally made a movie in Technicolor, and wow, that must have been something amazing. The movie is watchable, and it does star Arthur Lake. It's his first real performance. He's a small part in this, and absolutely atrocious, terrible acting. When you see him, especially in the black and white, it's shocking. You're like, what is going on with this character? The acting is so bad. You may know him. He went on to be famous as playing Dagwood from the comic strip throughout much of the 20th century. But this was him as a child playing a young actor and really phoning it in. It was so badly acted. But all the parts are badly acted in this. There was no need to be good at it. They just needed to get the color done. And they probably, I can only imagine, were not doing the multiple takes that you generally do with a lot of movies, because doing this in color was incredibly expensive. They were running through a lot of film because they had to have multiple cameras to do this at the time. So because of that, they probably, and I'm just hypothesizing, didn't take the time to do the double takes, the triple takes, the 30 takes to get just the right camera angle, just the right look, just the right lighting. They needed it to work really quickly. It feels like that. The reactions from the actors feel much more amateurish than you get in traditional productions even of the time. So that is probably a reason for it. Is it a good movie to go back and watch? Probably. I did find it watchable. It is not a good movie by any stretch, but being so early as a talkie, worth watching, and being the first full color, full release film absolutely makes it worth it. But be prepared, it is pretty boring, and the story is hard to follow, and you might not even need to bother following it. Just watch the movie and kind of take in the imagination that this was in color and what it would have looked like. So 1929 was mostly a special effects year in movies, and movie historians, of which I am not, tend to talk about the transition from silent movies to the talkies being a very rough one, and that it took roughly a decade, 1929 to 1939, for the talkies to, in any large number, of course there's exceptions, come back to the quality of storytelling and cinematography and just quality that we had maybe in 1928 with the silent films. And we saw the same thing happen many years later in the late 1990s when we started going into the special effects era. Again, in the 80s and 90s, we had some resurgence of amazing Hollywood features, great storytelling, amazing focus on acting and actors and just the cinematography. And then Jurassic Park, a watershed, amazing movie, and immediately after that, movies started going to special effects being the main character rather than just something to enhance when possible. And we saw this massive drop in the quality of films, and some of that has started to repair itself, but it took quite some time. And certainly for the immediate decade following Jurassic Park, movies got really bad. And we see this starting with the beginning of the talkies, that there was this shift to needing to act with their voice, and that kind of caused Hollywood to have to start over. The stars that they had before this time were not prepared to speak in many situations. The directors were not prepared to deal with this. The technical needs of recording the audio was not that great. There was so much transition in so many different aspects of the cinema process that we really saw a massive drop in quality. And I think these movies in 1929 highlight that. You can watch some movies from the late 1920s and feel like the silent movies really were getting quite good. If you're watching Fatty Arbuckle, if you're watching Charlie Chaplin, if you're watching Buster Keaton, right? There's some just outstandingly good acting and filmmaking during that era, along with others. And then these movies in 1929 that were so important just feel so awful compared to that. But they also feel a little bit more modern, and so there's that transition. So we're going to be seeing that happen, that we have this drop-off of quality. So we're starting this series where I'm starting with the talkies and going through them with this cliff moment where Hollywood just fell off the quality cliff and had to reinvent itself to be able to deal with speaking actors and hiring new people, hiring new directors, and changing their processes. So you're going to feel that, right? I think, and in some cases introducing color as well, but that was a much more minor artifact than voice acting. So that is an important perspective to maintain if you're going to follow along in these movies with me, that you have so much decline in quality and so much needing to figure out what to do, that for several years we're going to be continuously experiencing this, oh yeah, they didn't really iron this out yet, or they were resting on their laurels. They had added audio and they thought that was going to be enough, and clearly it was not. So that's going to be a recurring theme to these early movies. But 1929, definitely a year where that is strong. But I think because these are the very first movies, they get a bit of a pass on one side, but also I think they put in a little bit more effort than we're going to see, and you're going to see this in upcoming movies, that these two, I think, actually do a little bit better than some that follow, because they were the very first, they were the big investments, and they had to work. So if a movie was too awful, they wouldn't have been able to do it. The studios were not going to take that big of a risk on a truly awful movie. It had to be at least halfway decent. And Broadway Melody inspired sequels, so that worked out, even though it itself wasn't that fantastic. Now, this one, On With the Show, did not inspire sequels, but at least was a watchable movie. Not all the ones we're going to find are going to live up to that. So, if you'd like to help support the show that I'm doing here, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Alan Miller. Really appreciate that. Thanks for joining me on this walk through Hollywood history, and I will see you guys with the next show.